Sups, everybody! Mr. Sups here with another thing, a homework for the evolution of video games. What you're seeing now is some Ratchet and Clank that I'm using for B-roll. It's what I have. It's not really related to today's topic, but yeah. So this is going to be a bit different from last time. Last time was a very, just gaming in the old days. This is more of a gaming then and now. We are discussing a very finite point in the history of video games and seeing how it kind of relates to what's going on today. And that point is the crash of 1982. For those of you who don't know what the crash of 1982 was, it was a point where video games, the actual business angle of it, just kind of collapsed in on itself. And the entire sort of reputation of what a video game was, it was just tarnished. Now, this can be blamed on two very distinct things. It was just oversaturation and mismanagement at Atari. The oversaturation angle, there was just a ton of games coming out, and a lot of games that didn't even have, the right to exist, like Custer's Revenge, where you play General Custer and you go to rape Native American women. Yep, that was a thing. One of the other things that we talked about was called Chase the Chuck Wagon. I'm not really sure if you know this, but Chuck Wagon is a dog food brand. A dog food company was making a video game. Dog food. Yeah, it was bad, but let's move on to Atari. Now, a lot of people may know who Nolan Bushnell was. He was the founder of Atari. Yeah, he did found Atari, but the time that we're talking about, he was forced out. He was replaced by a guy called Ray Kasser. The professor kind of said you have to say his name with a little bit of slime, because he is not a very nice, well-remembered person. In fact, he's kind of a jerk. And there was a lot of things that he did wrong. One of the major things was that he refused to let designers take credit for their work. He was, paranoid that they would be poached by other studios. Like Asteroids, it was made by two guys called Lyle Rains and Ed Logg. Their name is nowhere on Asteroids because they weren't allowed to put it on there. Just like his general treatment of the designers, the people who were making his products, he didn't even bother to remember their names. So a lot of them left. And they went to go form Activision. And Activision is still around. Atari's not. But that wasn't the only bad thing that he did. A lot of people know that there was the Atari 2600. There was also a follow-up, the 5200. The 5200 was a failure, and it was doomed from the very beginning. It was just not a very good machine to work with. Our professor showed us a lot of side-by-sides of video games, like the ColecoVision versus the 5200's games, and the 5200 games looked terrible in comparison, and it was more powerful. It was that bad. But also, you know how you have a controller and it has a thumbstick on it, and if you move it around, it'll always go back to the center? Not the 5200. Yeah, that bad. But that wasn't the only thing that really did it. The final nail in the coffin was, actually two of them. Home Pac-Man and E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Now, these two are the most famous ones. Both of these games were very highly anticipated, because E.T. was huge at the time, and so was Pac-Man. In fact, Pac-Man is still the highest-selling arcade game of all time, and Miss Pac-Man is not far behind. And the home console version? Sucked. It just straight sucked. The ghosts weren't visible half the time, it was constantly blinking, it sounded awful, it was just bad. But then comes E.T. But as I said, E.T. was huge at the time, so Ray Kasser just got the rights and he just wanted to push the game out the door. So he got the least experienced designer and gave him weeks to make E.T. The results were predictable. E.T. failed, Pac-Man failed, and Atari stock went under. And in fact, Kasser's stock was mysteriously sold off right before the games came out. Weird. So the crash happened, and video games' reputation was gone. People just didn't want anything to do with them anymore. So now we get into the meat of this homework. Where are we right now in 2014 compared to 1982? So we're supposed to use two articles. One the professor gave us. It's the Guardian article about the PlayStation 4's development and release and how it's doing right now. And the other one was of our choosing, and I chose an article on The Escapist. The extra punctuation, Is the AAA Console Games Market Heading for a Crash? By Ben Yahtzee Croshaw. I'll link both of those. Yahtzee's article is kind of bitter. To be fair, he's kind of a bitter man. And in all honesty, he thinks it should. He thinks that there's just a lot of bloat and a lot of just bad business practices and just stuff that he doesn't like happening in the games industry that a lot of people don't either, and he thinks that it probably should just wipe this slate kind of clean. But as I said, he's kind of a bitter man. But he doesn't think that it's going to crash, and the Guardian article kind of backs that up with the kind of stuff that was going down in 1982. His reasoning why is that the industry now is not what it was in 1982. It's a lot stronger, and in his own words, it's far less centralized. To actually quote him, "But now, video gaming covers a wide spectrum, having a huge variety of demographics. First, there's platforms, consoles, PCs, tablets, and mobiles. Then you can split each platform's games into AAA and indie. Then those can be split further into a whole textbook's worth of gameplay types, visual styles, story genres. Technology has reached the point now that there is virtually no limit to the worlds that the video game creators can realize. And most importantly, the on-screen game actually resembles what's being displayed on the effing box art." I'm actually going to try to be reasonably family-friendly on this channel. And that's really a thing. It is far less centralized. As I said, it was Atari that went under, and it brought everything else down with it. He does make a point in the article that there's just a whole lot of bad business and oversaturation. But Yahtzee makes the point, there's just a lot of bad business and some oversaturation going on there. There's runaway budgets, diminishing returns on a lot of games, and that might not lead to the very healthiest economy, I would say, for the industry. But it is far less centralized. Back then, Atari went under. That's what caused the whole entire thing to just come crumbling down. Now, there are companies that are on the verge of collapse and have collapsed, like THQ recently went under, and Capcom is in danger of going under. But the market will survive that, because there's other things, and very, very strong things. Like if the PlayStation 4 would utterly fail and Sony just kind of pulled out of the console market, yeah, it would be bad, there would be a big void left in it, but the market will survive. Like there's the Xbox and the Wii U propping it up right now. And even then, the PlayStation 4 is not the 5200. That's the thing about the Guardian article. The PlayStation 4 is actually doing very well right now. They're talking about how there was a lot of thought put into the development of it. Like the 5200, there was no self-centering stick. And the article on The Guardian saying how Mark Cerny was saying, we need this thing and it's going to cost a bit more, but we're going to do it anyway because the PlayStation 4 needs to be a good product. So, are we really headed towards a crash? Is 2014 gonna be the new 1982, or is like 2015 gonna be the new 1982? Probably not. Really, probably not. There is a lot of things going down right now. We're in a very tipping point, because as I was talking about, Steam is not in the best of shapes right now, which is the biggest PC gaming distribution platform. The Wii U isn't selling all that well. And while the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One are selling reasonably well, their parent companies aren't doing so well. Sony's credit score is certified junk, and the Xbox is being rumored to be sold off to someone else. It doesn't seem to be doing all that well right now, but it's not going to be nearly as bad as it was.